Good morning. It is a beautiful, beautiful morning, and it's so nice to be together, and so nice for those who are here in person, and for those who are joining us later on. A very good morning. This class today is a very special day. Today is the 20th of Kislev. We're going to talk a little bit about it today and its power. I had the great fortune that two people in this class invited me to two different events. Uh, one was 2 nights ago with Rabbi Manis Friedman, and the other one was last night with Rabbi Simon Jacobson. And I thought that some of the highlights for me of those two lectures, Vibrangans, some of their ideas, and maybe some of my own and some others that kind of put it together for you today. I think some of the ideas we'll talk about today, my encouragement to you is to sometimes sometimes we have this tendency of there's an idea and it becomes a soundbite, and then we isolate on that idea and we don't hear the rest of it. And so my invitation today is to der Herr. In Yiddish, der Herr means there's this differentiation between Herren and der Herren. Hearing means you heard it. Der Herring means you internalized it. You allowed it to land. Last night, Rabbi Jacobson was talking very late in the evening. It was about 2:30 in the morning, and he said he's quite an incredible person. For many years, he was uh, the the it's called transcriber of the Rebbe's talks. So the Rebbe would talk on Shabbos for it could be 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, and there was no recording, and they wanted to document the Rebbe's talk. So there was a group of people who would remember word for word, almost verbatim, every single word that the Rebbe said, and then after Shabbat, they would sit and write down the Rebbe's talks, and he was one of them. And so last night he said, "I want to give you some tricks for memory." And he said, "I guarantee you that with this, your memory will be 20% better." Obviously, it was intriguing. 20% better memory. I'm in. So he started off by saying that the more you know, the more you're not going to remember. Because if someone is talking and you're processing your own information while they're talking, then you're not going to remember anything. That it takes this idea, and he used this Hasidic idea called bittul, which is this humility, um, the ability to not get in your own way and just to receive, not to process, not to receive and process at the same time, but to allow yourself to receive and then later process it after you received. And so often we're doing all those things at the same time, and as a result, we do nothing. And I thought that was an amazing thing. Then he said, what he encouraged us to do. He said, sit down and read through a few pages, and then close the book, and then write down everything that you read there. And then he asked us, what percentage do you think you remember? And he said he does this with groups all the time. And he said most of the time you have these people who, it's okay, they're doing it together. They sit there, they read through it quickly, they close the book, they write it all down, and then they're sitting there like this, waiting for all the other people who are not as smart to finish their reading and their writing. And he said, then he'll tell them, well, then now you'll have your neighbor check how you did. And he said the people who read through it fast and wrote it fast and thought they were the smartest in the room are always the ones that do the worst. And sometimes they even, when they transcribe what they remembered from what they read, it's the opposite of what actually they read. And then when they realize that they did it wrong, he says, try again. And this time, take your time, get out of the way, be humble, bittul, allow yourself to just read it, process, not process it, read it. And then he said they do much better. And he said that will improve your memory by 20% just by getting out of your own way, just by not processing information when you hear it, but rather allowing yourself to receive. One of the things I want to talk about today is this idea of Jewish chosenness. It seems to be popping up a lot in my world. Oh, the Jewish people, the chosen people. What does that mean? Growing up, there was always the joke, right? Old Greenberg, after 100 years, goes up to heaven and has one question for God, knocks on the door and says, God, I have a question for you. God answers the door, yes. Says, is it true the Jewish people are the chosen people? Yes, it is. Says, can you please choose someone else for a change? That's joke number 14. It's that old. So there's this idea of chosenness. And there's almost right now in the world this obsession with Israel, with the Jews. And so I want to ask today, what does it really mean to be chosen? I don't see any way of rationally explaining the obsessive hatred of Israel and Jews without the faith that Jews are God's chosen people to make the world a place of goodness and kindness. Now, when I say that, a lot of people get a pit in their stomach. What does that mean? Now, the obsession with Jews, a people that doesn't even constitute 0.25% of humanity, has been going on for almost 4,000 years. It makes no sense. 500,000 people are murdered in Syria, including tens of thousands of children, and I didn't hear one demonstration. Israel goes to war trying to protect its children from being slaughtered, fighting an enemy that wants its own children to die so Israel can be demonized, and the Jews are condemned. Traumatized, self-hating Jews, and even have the chutzpah to call Gaza a Jewish concentration camp when Israel expelled every last Jew from Gaza in 2005. Had the Gaza population not voted in Hamas in 2006 and chosen to spend all of its resources on murdering Jews, Gaza could have been the Singapore of the Middle East. And it goes on Israel, blaming Israel for having checkpoints, which only exist because without them, there would be terrorist attacks daily. They want an airport in Gaza so that planes can murder tens of thousands of Jews in daily. We thought that it was just the war. The war will be over and this obsession will go away. Well, the war's over, and it seems the obsession didn't. And I think it makes no sense unless, and I'm not trying to justify it, but I want to have a conversation and a difficult conversation. Because it makes no sense unless you can appreciate the truth that the Jewish people are God's people. Chosen for what? Chosen to serve as a light unto the nations. A divine flame lit on the cosmic way. And so, because of that, we trigger the world in unimaginable ways. And we ask ourselves, well, it's not my fault. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be Jewish. I wasn't me. I didn't do it. I'm not the prime minister of Israel. I'm just I'm Jewish, but I'm just some ordinary Jew somewhere in Montreal. What do I have to do with any of this? And it's not easy for me and for a lot of Jews to accept. And it seems to be that the world knows this, but we never got the memo. Virtually every other nation has perceived itself as chosen or otherwise divinely special. For example, China means Middle Kingdom in Chinese, meaning that China is the center of the world. Japan considers itself the lands where the sun originates, the land of the rising sun. The British thought they were chosen, and the Muslims thought they were chosen, and the Christians, of course, they see themselves as chosen. And they would love hearing it. But you tell a Jew that you're chosen, and they're going to say, no, 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 no. Choose someone else. Me, never. I'm just a human. Thank you very much. Keep your chosen to somebody to something else. And of course, Jewish chosenness cannot be racist because Jews are not a race. There are Jews of every race. And what's more is any person of any race, of any ethnicity, of any nationality can become a member of the Jewish people and thereby also be chosen, like Abraham and Sarah, like Moses, like Jeremiah, like Maimonides, like the chief rabbi of Israel. Can reason alone explain how a hodgepodge of ex-slaves was able to change history, to introduce the moral creator we know as God, to devise ethical monotheism, to write the world's most influential book, the Bible, to be the only civilization to deny the cyclical worldview and give humanity belief in a linear, in a purposeful history, to provide morally driven prophets, and so much more, without God playing a decisive role in this people's history. Rabbi Friedman was making a joke the other night, and he was saying that somebody had asked him, "What's Passover?" And he said, we're celebrating the Jews' freedom from slavery. He's like, "Oh, that's nice. How long ago was that? How long have you been doing that?" It's like, "Oh, just 3,000 years." So you think you can get over it by now? Like, you know, figure something out. 3,000 years, you're still talking about your slavery? Come on. But we're uncomfortable. We're somehow, I can only speak for myself, but we're uncomfortable. Like, why did it have to be this way? Who needs this idea that one people is chosen? We can all be chosen. We're just humans. I think about this a lot. Like, I'm just one of humanity. Why do I have to be? I'm not better than you. I have a nose. You have a nose. I have eyes. You have eyes. It seems unenlightened to suggest that as Jews, we're somehow closer to God than all the other nations. It smacks of arrogance, of elitism, of prejudice. I don't want to be part of that. I'm not an elitist. I'm not prejudiced. And I think that it's because, so generally, when I have something that triggers me, that bothers me, there's really two options. You can create a narrative, which a lot of people do. I don't want to be part of it. This is not, well, that's what other people think. I don't actually think that. That's a generalization. So you can kind of disconnect yourself and separate yourself from that idea. Or, and what I've tried to do more recently in my life is if it triggers me or I don't like it, I want it to inspire me to curiosity. Okay, I keep on hearing this thing chosen. Just giving you the example of our conversation. What does it mean? Maybe I don't understand what they're talking about. Maybe I never gave an idea a chance because it triggers me so much because all I think about is, I don't want to be a prejudice. I don't. I want to just accept me for who I am. Let's stop rocking the boat here. And so that curiosity and my invitation to myself and to us is to let that curiosity inspire and direct maybe a different conversation. Okay, let's step into the world of what these people who call this chosen and what it means. And the story that I want to tell you is a story that takes us back some 2 centuries. In 1798, Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi, founder of the Chabad movement, today he's known as the Alter Rebbe, he was arrested and charged with treason on the basis of petitions to the Tsar by some people who were opposing him. It was a devastating moment in Jewish history. He could have been given the capital punishment, heaven forbid. And that would have been the end of not only the Chabad movement, but much of the Hasidic movement. The trumped up charges were that at the time, Russia was in a war with the Ottoman Empire, with the Turks. And Israel, the land of Israel, was under the Ottoman control. And Rabbi Shner Zalman was sending money to the Jews, the poor Jews of Israel. The Jews in Russia were poor, but the Jews that were living in Israel were incredibly poor. And Rabbi Shner Zalman would send money, and the Russians saw that as an act of treason. And they arrested him for sending money to the poor Jews of the Holy Land. After 53 days in prison, he was exonerated of all charges and freed. And the event is celebrated to this day. It is called the Rosh Hashanah, the New Year of the Hasidic world. It is a very, very special day, and it's yesterday and today. Today, the reason why it's yesterday and today is because he was released on the 19th, and he actually came home on the 20th. And today, being the 20th, marks this very special day. And it's been celebrated by the Hasidic world since that time. And that day marked the decisive victory of the Hasidic movement and the onset of a new expanded phase in the exploration, in the dissemination of the infinite spiritual depths of Judaism, embodied in Hasidism, of which all of us are very much affected by. A lot of the teachings in this class come from that post-release era. Upon his release, Rabbi Shneur Zalman dispatched a short but powerful letter to his followers. It's one of the most extraordinary letters that I've ever read. The Rebbe had suffered so much as a result of his opponents. They persecuted him and his followers even before the arrest. And then came the arrest and his terrifying trial. And yet, this letter, in it, he warns his disciples against any display of haughtiness as a result of their victory. Don't do any victory dances. He didn't say that. I'm just paraphrasing it. He instructs them not to denigrate, not to tease, not to show disdain to those who crave their downfall. And the letter opens with the verse that is stated by Jacob in Bereshit, in the book of Genesis. I have become small by all the kindnesses and by all the truth that you have done to your servant. The verse appears in the beginning of the Torah portion of Vayishlach, last week's portion, which is usually the portion that is read the Shabbat before the 19th of Kislev. The Alter Rebbe is perturbed by the obvious question. Why was Jacob humbled by all the kindness he was shown? Why didn't it bolster his pride? If God gave all this to me, I probably deserve it. I could see somebody becoming prideful and becoming a very different emotional reaction to success, to kindness from God. And the Alter Rebbe in this letter conveys a profound, profound idea. He talks about the Jewish understanding of chosenness. That for us, the idea of chosenness leads not to arrogance, but rather to humility. If it were some human king who chose us to be his special people, then he says your assumption would be correct. We would become elitists. When a mortal power shows favoritism towards a subject, that subject will become more arrogant as a result. The closer you are to the king, we don't have any idea about kings today, but you can imagine for most of the world, there was this idea, for most of history, there was this monarchy, so people used examples of kings. And so in that world, the closer you are to the king, the more significant you are. You're part of high society. Maybe, if you get invited to to an event, sometimes an event, and it's like above your social echelon. You're like, oh, look at that, this is special. Maybe that's the example, and you can become, oh, look at that, they look at what they think I am. I'm part of this higher society. I'm part of something special. And so in this situation, the first thought is, I'm significant. The closer I am to higher society, the higher respect I feel that I deserve. But he says, we weren't chosen by high society. We were chosen by God. And the closer you are to God, the more you sense your insignificance. While being buddy-buddy with a human leader inflates your ego, a relationship with God bursts your selfish bubble. Because God is an infinite being, and all delusions of petty self-importance fall away when you stand before infinity. Being close with God, what does it demand? It demands introspection. It demands self-improvement, but not smugness. In Judaism, God is the core of reality, the entire reality of existence. We're all part of reality. We're all in reality. We're all part of God, and in God, in reality, there's a there's an organic oneness that unites all of existence, all of humanity, all of the cosmos. And that organic unity is what we call God. We say Hashem Echad, which means God is one. God does not only mean that there's one God and not 20 gods. It means that God is synonymous with oneness. For those who were part of our conversation a few weeks ago about prayer and the highest level, the Atzilut, the highest level of prayer, this idea of oneness, I'm gonna move in and lean into that for a moment. The word God is another way of saying that there is only one. There is oneness that pervades all of existence. That we are all reflections of one reality, one core. We're all manifestations, diverse expressions of a singular reality. So to be conscious of that oneness, maybe God is another triggering word for some. But oneness, to be conscious of that oneness, means to never allow your ego to wrap you in its superficial imagination. Ego stands for easing God out or edging God out. When I don't realize my true greatness and value as a reflection of God's infinite oneness, I must resort to my ego to feel good about myself and to put you down. Because becoming God's conscious means that at every moment, I don't need to protect my ego. As I become completely comfortable with my true reality as an expression of a divine light, the more God conscious I am, the smaller I become and the greater I become. So on one level, if you're following me here, on one level, I become nothing because there's nothing but the organic oneness, the absolute infinity of God, which pervades all. And at the same time, I become the greatest as my life becomes a full and seamless expression of the higher, unifying, integrating, eternal consciousness of the eternal core of all reality. Being close to God summons you to respect others more, not less. The more God conscious, the more loving, the more charitable you become. Because you're aware that God's light pervades every person and every creature. When in the name of chosenness, a person becomes bigoted, a person becomes disrespectful, elitist, arrogant, they've missed the entire story. They've missed the entire message. When you become aware of God choosing you, it eliminates the judgmentalism And we resort to protect our egos, to feel better about ourselves and our place in the world. Your success never equals my failure. I reflect one aspect of God, and you reflect another. And within that, there's space for all of us. This is the idea of the chosen people. A people who have been given the opportunity to sense God's closeness, to hear God's truth, to relay a message of truth to the world. And all agree, whether they like to admit it or not, that it was the Jews who introduced the world to monotheism and to a system of ethics and morals, at least the Western world for sure, that has shaped the modern view of life and its purpose. And it's the survival of Judaism to this day that attests to the eternal values of the system. Anyone from any ethnic background can convert to Judaism and become chosen. It's not elitist. Jewish chosenness is not a gene, it's the state of a soul. And anyone who's wishing to take it upon themselves, we don't look for anyone, but anyone who's wishing that is welcome, as long as they're ready to have their bubble burst. Anyone can join this group of quote unquote chosen people as long as they're ready to experience themselves as nothing. But nothing is the potential for anything. The idea of ayin, of nothing. And that's a Jew. And I think that's why so many people loathe the Jews. Because we've been chosen to teach each and every person alive that each of them has been chosen to serve God, to become an ambassador of love, an ambassador of light, an ambassador of goodness in this beautiful world that sometimes seems noisy, sometimes seems messy, but is absolutely beautiful. So when I look at our people, I ask myself one question. Has our belief that we are the chosen people turned us into murderous people who feel that they have the right to abuse or to target or to annihilate other cultures and peoples who are different? Or has it made us feel responsible to share, to give, to contribute, to help? Has the idea of chosen people turned us into people who are never introspective? Or maybe it's turned us into the most self-critical, introspective nation on earth. Often the worst critics of Israel are Jews. And the true test of chosenness is how humble are you? And most Jews today have passed that test with flying colors because their humility is so deep, it doesn't even allow them to accept that they're chosen. While most other religious groups, Judaism is not religious, but if you want to compare and contrast and say the word religion, we predate religion. But most other people who are religion, who come after us, are quite comfortable in claiming that they're the best, that their religion is the only way. That's why I'm happy that we predate religion, because definitely we're not saying that our religion is the only way. And even more so, we become very apologetic about it. And we'll do anything to say that we're nothing special. we don't go out and look for converts because it's not a religion, A, and B, it's ask any Jew, like, for what? Why? I was born into this. I'm screwed for life. Like, why would you want it? And now that, I would say, is what you called the chosen people. So I'll bring it all together here. Rabbi Shneur Zalman explained that this was the hallmark of Jacob. This was the hallmark of Yaakov. To the self-absorbed person, a kindness from God is proof of their own significance, of their own worth. To the spiritually mature person, a kindness from God is first and foremost an act of divine love. God is drawing a person closer to the divine. And the closer one comes to God, the more we realize that our own insignificance is in the face of a divine infinity. That all we are is mortal humans in a boundless world that is infinite. And this is what it means to think as a Jew. When you were blessed with a gift, when you were showered with a blessing, the first instinct of the Jew is katonti. I am humbled. I am humbled, says Yaakov, says Jacob, for this abounding kindness. And this, the Alter Rebbe taught, must be the response of Jacob's children. We are called Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, the children of Jacob. That as the children of Jacob, our response to the grace that we have seen is to become far more humble, to become far more authentic, to become far more divine, to suspend our egos and become channels for divine oneness. And when we realize that we've been chosen, we cultivate a healthy confidence that comes not from ego, but from humility. It's about respecting our role as divine ambassadors for goodness, for truth. Then we'll never duck to the pressure of those who want us to compromise our eternal mission to eliminate evil and to cultivate goodness. And so on this beautiful day, the 20th of Kislev, this holy day, the Rosh Hashanah of Hasidus, a day that we celebrate our souls, we celebrate our spirituality, we celebrate sometimes things that are uncomfortable for us to acknowledge because we don't have a reference point for them. My blessing to you today is may we be able to take a breath and to accept some things that are difficult for us to accept. And to remember that the only way to truly listen to someone else is to listen with humility. If we're listening and we're trying to answer or justify it or spiritualize it as we're listening, then we didn't hear a thing. And we'll never remember anything. But the secret, he said 20% better, is that when you listen with humility, with bittul. Allow it to land. Accept it. Become a receiver. Later you can challenge it. Later you can debate it. Later you can spiritualize it. That's in the processing. But first allow it to exist. Even if it makes you squeamish and even if it challenges you. I am definitely someone who has had to learn that in my life because right away it's like, is it true or is it not true? Is it my truth or is it not my truth? And then as a result, I think it stops me from being able to to learn something that is completely uncomfortable for me. And the only way I'm going to truly grow as a person is to learn something that's really uncomfortable for me. And so that's my blessing on this beautiful day. And that's the blessing that the Alter Rebbe gave to us, the blessing of humility, of bittul, and realizing our power. We're very powerful. I don't mean it as a whole, I mean it as an individual, that each one of us has a tremendous power and a tremendous ability to bring goodness and wholeness to a world that needs it so desperately right now. And may we be able to have the ability to rise above the noise and to become co-creators of our realities. And as a result, that co-creation should affect us and then our families and then our communities and eventually the entire world. Wish you a good Yom Tif and a beautiful Shabbat and Shabbat Shalom.